there, chatters. I'm Nat.
And I'm Kat, and welcome to the Crime Chat. I am your forensic femme fatale. Natalie is your true crime console.
Yes, we are just two normal girls obsessed with dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown.
And here's your disclaimer, chatters. The following Crime Chat does contain adult content and will contain violent scenarios, so your listener discretion is advised.
You have been warned, and before we get into today's Crime Chat, we have a big announcement to make.
Yay!
Our 100th episode is coming up next month, and we want to celebrate.
Yes.
We want to celebrate our chatters. We want to celebrate you.
Yes.
In the best way that we know possible, and that is to let's just go live.
Fuck it, we do it live.
Fuck it. No editing. Let's just go live. No makeup, no editing,
Let's
nothing.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Mark your calendars, chatters. July 13th, we are going to celebrate our 100th episode, and we're going to chat about murder and murder. More to come.
Ooh. Yes, that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Kat, what have you been up to?
So I downloaded the GhostTube SLS app. So they have an SLS, which is like the little frame guy, right? The little green frame guy that kind of identifies figures. And then the Vox. So the Vox is the frequency kind of that it picks up on like radio chatter.
Okay.
And I've played around with it a little bit. I haven't really noticed anything else other than the feeling, and that could be up in my head, but like I feel like somebody's there.
Well, somebody could be there. I mean, did the SLS like pick up on these green little men?
No. I mean, it gave false positives in like when I was scanning around like on pictures or like on the TV or on Biscuit. Like it picked up, like false things, but nothing that was like inexplicable.
It picks up something with the head and legs.
Yeah, of course. And that's what it kind of gives you, that like disclaimer on the app. But there's a potential for like false positives just because, you're scanning through and you see something. Yeah. You have to think about what is it actually scanning for. So It's been fun. I've been playing around with it. The Voxing is just like crazy. I had it going last night and I was dying laughing. Just the things that it was saying, like, right. But did you know?
Wait a minute. So that Vox, is it on the same app?
It's the same company. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if you're on the SLS app and you click on the like little ghost at the up right hand corner, there's a drop down menu and it gives you all the other GhostTube applications.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I know what the Vox is. Like I've actually played with the Vox before. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
All right.
The Spirit Box is another one that gets called the Spirit Box.
Mm-hmm. Is that thing? Yes. Is that thing? Like they hold it and it's like the little. Boop, 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 boop.
So there's a couple different ones. There's one that shows up that gives you the words, right, of what it's saying. Then there's another one that very quickly scans radio frequencies. And a lot of times that's where they are saying that the history behind it is that they can pick up on spirits that are in a certain frequency if that's the words they're saying. But a lot of times it has to be like 2, 3, 4 words at a time in order to think that it's anything. And the idea is to ask questions and then let the Vox answer. We did that when I did the ghost hunt in Savannah at the Moon River Brewery Company. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we used that. We used the SLS. We used a couple of different other things, the heat signatures, that kind of thing.
That's interesting. Or just find out like when is like the witching hour, 3 a.m, and then do it then.
It's got to be in the middle of the night. I mean, but honestly, I love my sleep too much. You can bother me all you want. Freak me out, I guess. Although I will say, last night, I was chillaxing at the end of the day. I got the first part of my final turned in, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a glass of wine, and I'm going to take a hot bath. I was getting up out of the bath, and I felt this, like, thing in the back of my neck. But I thought because I have some neck issues, so I was like, maybe it's just, like, a pinched nerve or something. But I was like, could it be? Probably not.
I don't know, but you're getting, like, if your home is haunted and you're having this physical interaction with ghosts, like that's like a next level. Like, it's not.
Well, is it though? I mean, like maybe not. Know, I could understand. Like, I could provide some level of justification for some of the things. Like, I'm more of on a diagnosis by exclusion.
Okay.
Like, I'm not afraid. I'm not anything like that. I don't feel like it's a demon or like a bad spirit or anything like that. Like, I have zero feeling. But hey, if they want to play and interact, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's scary.
If I feel licks on my face, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah. See, remember when I said like a year ago, I said I think my place is haunted because I felt somebody touch me while I was laying
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But the backstory to my condo was that two people died there.
Oh,
Like one
okay.
person, they both died from natural causes. This is
But
Florida.
still.
Everybody's older. One,
Every-
so they all
you
died
can't
of
you can't
old
go
age.
anywhere without somebody have died in Florida.
Oh my God.
Well, my girlfriend told me, I was telling her about it, and she's like, "Do you know the history of the house?" And I was like, "Well, I know the couple that lived here for many, many, many years. I don't think
Right.
they moved into it when it was brand new, but they might have. And our house is only 20 years old, so and they
Right.
lived here for many, many times. We've lived here for 7 years, so
Right.
almost 8 years. Yeah.
Oh my God. Maybe it's like a poltergeist type of thing.
No, so the difference between a ghost and a poltergeist?
Uh-huh. I did.
Poltergeist attaches to a human, and the ghost is attached to a place.
Right. And poltergeist makes noise.
Yeah. I just
Moving stuff and
Don't
yeah.
stare into the TV.
No.
But other than that, let's see. So we haven't gone back to Sons of Anarchy at all. And then Chris never finished the last couple episodes when we were rewatching Stranger Things. So we kind of are doing that. But it dawned on me yesterday that the American Horror Story Delicate, the second half of the season with Emma Roberts and Kim Kardashian's in it.
Yeah.
So that came out in April, and I don't know where I was. Oh, I know where I was. I was working, but like, like that came out, and I was like, "Oh, where have I been? Okay, let's watch this." So I watched. There's only 4 episodes, I think, that came out, and I watched 2 of them last night, and oh, so good.
So one of the
So
coolest
good.
actresses alive is in Delicate, and she is one of the witches. I want to say she's the nurse. She was in the Suicide Squad. She played the Empress in the
Oh,
Suicide
yeah.
Squad.
Cara Delevingne.
Oh God, she is like the
She
coolest
is
actress.
amazing. I love. Yeah, she's great. She was also in Only Murders in the Building.
She in the new season? Wait a minute, she's in that. She's in that.
She's in either season 2 or season 3. Yeah.
Okay, it has
Yeah.
to be the newer season because I don't remember her. She's one of my favorites. Like I think I would remember her. I don't know, but I'm shocked because she's such a I mean, she must have a really good part.
No, she did.
Okay.
I mean, she was definitely very key
Okay.
and won't be coming back. But
Ah, okay.
not for that reason.
Okay.
But for other reasons. That was a really good season, so you got to watch it.
Okay.
So what about you?
Okay, so I have an update from our last episode, Gypsy Rose.
Gasp.
So she is on a season of Love After Lockup.
No way.
Yeah. And you can see her relationship, her marriage with Ryan play out on TV, like legit. You can see her first minutes coming out of the clanker or jail. She's coming out, the clanker. Automatically, you can also see why they got divorced. So he did have some control issues. This poor girl.
She said, I've been controlled my whole life. Fuck you.
Yeah. And I totally respect it because the new guy she's
Yeah.
with, Ken, he seems like a great guy. Like I'm happy. I'm really happy for her. But the first night it creeped me out because when I was watching it, I'm like, okay, so I guess between jail and them traveling to the father's house, they stopped off at a hotel.
Got it on.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the thing was, you can tell, like, her body language was, I need a minute. I haven't been in a regular bed in 7 years. Like, she's sitting on the bed. She's like, oh my God. And you could see her decompressing. Like, you could see her, like, just accepting her situation and being happy. And he was like leering at her in a very weird way and like touching her weird. And he actually made a very odd joke. She was nervous. She's like, oh my God, we're going to sleep together. She's never slept in the same bed with them, like with the man. Well,
I was going to say that, yeah.
so she was nervous about snoring. She's like, what if I snore? He goes, I'll buy you a sleep apnea machine like your mother. What the fuck was that? Who says that? I mean, you could tell immediately. I think, like, the cameraman were like, what?
Okay.
Yeah. So they consummated the marriage, but you kind of tell, like, she had no choice. Like, she kind of had to, I don't know.
And like you were saying, too, from last week, that she would be so easy to fall victim to an abuser who maybe not, most abusers don't realize they're abusers until they get called out on their shit.
Yeah.
So the fact that he probably maybe didn't realize, but that's what he knows,
Right.
and then what she knows succumbs to that, and
Yeah, and I don't know, like he just seemed she regretted it. She came out on a post on Instagram post and she said like I totally regret getting married in jail. I was lost. I didn't know. I just, I just felt kind of accepted by him, but I didn't know any better. And when she finally got
right.
out and she's living a normal life and she's surrounded with her family and her dad and her stepmother, I think she started to realize what a stable life looks like. And what was happening with Ryan was he was acting a lot like her mother, like controlling. And people actually did like a side by side picture of her with her mother and then her with Ryan, and Ryan looks eerily similar to her mother.
That's devastating.
Very weird.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that they got divorced. Well, they're in the process of getting divorced, but I'm happy she figured that out real soon. And if she's happy with Ken, I'm happy for you, Gypsy.
Yes.
So
very cool.
Yeah, very cool. And I have been binge watching the '70s show.
Oh, I love the '70s show.
It's awesome.
Have you seen the '90s show?
I have not. Is it good?
I saw a couple episodes like when it first came out. It's cute.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same type of thing, but Donna and Eric have kids now.
Yeah. I love Kitty. Kitty is just like,
oh, she's perfect.
her laugh gives me life. Like, it's everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Well, today's story is not funny like Kitty. It is absolutely devastating.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you asked me to do an intro on unsolved crimes. Now, I know we've done this before, so it could be similar to another intro that we did, but I definitely kind of sprinkled in some other stuff, and I will be quizzing you along the way, Kat. So,
Gasp!
You ready?
Okay.
So, the term unsolved, when referring to a crime, it refers to a criminal investigation that has not been resolved or solved. It is different from other crimes in the sense that it has not been actively pursued due to a lack of leads, evidence, or resources, and the perpetrator remains unidentified, or there is insufficient evidence to prosecute any suspect.
Right.
The use of the word unsolved began to gain prominence in the 19th century. Newspapers and other publications started to report more extensively on crimes, including those that remained unsolved. So that was kind of like their trigger word, like unsolved. And everybody was, oh my God, The term cold case is often used interchangeably with unsolved case, but there are differences between the two.
Yes.
So unsolved cases is a case that remains unsolved with no suspect identified or insufficient evidence to make an arrest. A cold case refers to an unsolved case that has been inactive for a significant period. These cases are often revisited with new evidence or technology, and they can be reopened, or they can just because it's cold doesn't mean it's closed.
And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit towards the end of the story today.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So now, once a case becomes cold or unsolved, it means that it is no longer the subject of a current criminal investigation. However, like I said, it doesn't mean that the case has been abandoned. Cold cases may be reviewed or reopened with, new leads and new evidences. And a lot of detectives, we just spoke about one with the smiley face. God, Kevin Gannon. He had just like in his spare time, he looked up cold cases. Like some people just have that detective nature that they want to try to figure out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It is difficult to determine the first unsolved case in history, as records are not always available. And many ancient cases have been lost to time. The first documented unsolved case in history dates back to ancient times. The murder of, okay, Kat, go ahead. It's got the dot over the O.
Utsi.
The murder of Utsi, the Iceman.
Not the Iceman.
It's the Iceman, not the Iceman, the Hitman.
Yeah, I was going to say, not the mob Iceman.
No, this is from the copper.
Utsi.
It's a Copper Age mummy who was found frozen in a glacier after being killed more than 5,000 years ago.
Ew.
I know.
Wow.
While the case is not officially classified unsolved, it serves as kind of like an example of the ancient crimes and the fact that, not every crime is going to be resolved because there is a lack of evidence. And the passage of time also destroys evidence as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're going to solve a 5,000-year-old
no,
case.
no.
No.
It is challenging to pinpoint the exact number of unsolved cases globally, but the United States is known for a high number of unsolved murders and crimes due to the size and just the comprehensive crime reporting. We do have pretty good detectives, very good detectives. States with large populations in the United States do have higher crime rates, such as California. Typically have like the highest number of unsolved cases, I guess. Like I'm assuming cities too, large cities with the large population. Now, according to recent data, California leads the nation in unsolved homicides. According to the 2020 report by the FBI, the clearance rate for homicides in the United States is around 60%, meaning approximately 40% remain unsolved.
That's pretty high.
It is high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over the years, advancements in forensic science have led to the resolution of numerous cold cases. The exact percentage of solved cold cases varies, but some estimates suggest that around 20 to 25% of cold cases eventually get solved. That's
actually pretty good.
that is good, right?
It's decent. Yeah.
Unsolved crimes continue to captivate the public's imagination due to their mysterious nature and the hope that someday justice will prevail. From the ancient history to modern day investigations, these cases highlight the challenges and complexities of criminal investigations. While advancements in technology offer new hope for solving these cases, many mysteries continue to invite intrigue and speculation. And opportunities.
We'll talk about some of those challenges.
Right, and opportunities to have a podcast about them.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so here are the top 5. Oh, you know what? Before we get into that, let me just quiz you on a question that I pulled up here. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
All right. So, here's the question. The theft from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, or the Gardner Museum, took place in the early morning of March 18th, 1990. In Boston, the thieves disguised themselves as Boston police officers and gained access to the building before it opened to the public. 13 works, estimated a combined value of $500 million, was stolen. One painting stolen has an estimated value of $200 million and and that was back then. So, what was the name of the painting that was stolen that was worth $200 million?
I have no idea.
Was it The Storm on the Sea of the Gallet? Was it The Concert? Was it The Girl with the Pearl Earring? Or was it The Scream?
The Scream. That's the one that's like, ah!
Yes, that's Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah, that is Van Gogh. That's right. Yeah. No, I really have I don't even remember that.
The painting that was stolen was The Concert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know why it's worth that much, but...
Womp, womp, womp.
Yeah. Have you ever looked into that case? It's crazy.
No, I've never heard of it. Yeah.
So they did this theft, and they know who the thieves are, and the thieves know that they know who they are, but they can't submit the paintings because then they'll be arrested. And they just kind of like, the police are aware that the paintings are safe. They just don't know where it is, but they can never turn over the paintings because they'll be arrested.
They can never sell them. Nothing. They can't even go on the black market or anything.
Nothing. It's crazy.
Stuck.
They're stuck.
They did all that for nothing.
Yes. Okay. So back to the story. All right. So I have the 5 most famous unsolved cases of all time. First one, of course, Jack the Ripper. Location, London, England. Date, 1888. Jack the Ripper is one of history's most infamous serial killers, responsible for the gruesome murders of at least 5 women in Whitechapel District, London.
Or Jane the Ripper.
When are you going to go over that?
Great question. So I think I mentioned it before. Patricia Cornwell, my favorite author, she did a nonfiction book, and through DNA testing and spending a lot of her own money, making several trips over to England,
right,
actually figured out through DNA testing who she thinks it is.
What the hell, Kat?
Walter Sickle.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least do a crime chat based, like, kind of reflect on the book, on her investigation.
Yeah.
Because there's so many.
So when I was going for my undergrad a long time ago, I read her book and did one of my papers based off of her, because it talked a lot about like forensic science and the new DNA possibilities that obviously had come out. And I
Right.
want to say her book's probably at least 20 years old now. But Walter Sickert is who she claims was through DNA.
Okay.
But some people have actually discounted her claims and all of her like evidence and investigation that she did.
Well, I think it's worth a dive in her work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is she still alive?
Oh, yeah. She lives in Boston.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
I follow her.
Okay.
And when I was in Boston, it was funny because when we went to Boston when I was up in Virginia working, we went to Boston for a couple days for work. And Chris came up with me because he's a Red Sox fan. So I was like, Patricia Cornwell lives here. Should we go say hi? And he's like, sure.
She would have you arrested. She would be like, oh my God. You could go, I'm your biggest fan.
I am your biggest fan. But her whole Scarpetta series, it's like 20 plus books. One came out last year that I haven't finished yet.
Right.
Another one just came out this year, so I'm a wee bit behind, but it follows the medical examiner Dr. K. Scarpetta and her career. It has some familiar characters that have kind of appeared throughout all of the stories. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay.
So I guess Patricia Cornwell, when she was getting into figuring out that she wanted to actually be an author, she actually worked at a medical examiner's office. So she got a lot of personal experience to create this character and the scenes and everything like that, which is super cool.
That sounds really cool. Okay, we need a deep dive. All right, that's my chatter request. All right, number 2, the Zodiac Killer. Location, Northern California. The date, 1960s, 1970s, between there. The Zodiac Killer is another notorious serial killer who terrorized Northern California, I guess they claim that he or she murdered 37 people. I guess 37 people it said. But they don't know. Like, it went as low as 5 people, but then it went as high as 37. So I don't think they... Oof.
So do you think that I'm wondering what made him realize that these people had different zodiac signs, and because it had to have been coincidental. Like, they were completely random victims. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I got a Gemini. Now I have a Cancer. Now I have... Yeah. I think it was completely random, and he just kind of picked up on that and was like, I'm going to use this.
Right. And there is like a term that we spoke about once before about people who see patterns in things. So maybe we just saw a pattern and we just... Yeah. Trendy little name. Okay. Next one.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? This is a good time for another quiz.
Oh.
All right. Next one. The Mystery of the Somerton Man is an unsolved death and unidentified man found in the morning of December 1st, 1948 on Somerton Beach in South Australia. The case is also referred to as what? 1, the case of the ears. 2, a Taman Shud case. A Taman Shud case. 3, the man on the beach. Or 4, a Tam Shut case.
Oh, I think it's the man on the beach, but I could be wrong. A Taman, is it?
It's the second one, a Taman Shud case.
Shud case, yeah.
So the reason why that is because he had a little note in his like
Oh,
jeans
from the book.
Yes.
That was like rolled up and like sewn into part of his jeans. That was part of a book that they were able to find where that little torn piece of paper came from at this specific book. Yeah.
That's
because it
crazy.
had like, and they found a phone number.
Yes.
That led to, So they actually identified descendants of the Somerton Man recently.
Wasn't he like a ballerina or a dancer or something like that they think that who he was?
Maybe. But they also think that he could have been into some of the spy game.
Oh, back then, 1948, I'm sure.
Yeah. Australia's Somerton Man mystery has been considered solved as DNA points to man's identity. The man found on the city's beaches in 1948 belonged to Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker born in Melbourne, Australia in 1905.
Wow.
DNA sequencing says that they were able to locate the final piece of the puzzle that has captivated historians, amateur sleuths, and conspiracy theorists for more than 70 years. Now, the other one I want to know, the other story that I actually want to cover is the arm in the shark's mouth.
What the hell is that? Oh!
So the shark that was caught and they discovered that there was this arm and like where that arm belonged to, who the arm belonged to, and everything. That's one I'm super interested in because it's got sharks and murder.
Yeah, what year was that?
That's a great question.
You know what? You need to do a movie versus the real reality with Jaws because they found an arm in Jaws. Maybe it was based on that.
I do know Jaws is based on like the early 1900s from New Jersey, that the Great White, there was like several shark attacks that was like back to back. So I do know that's what Jaws is based on.
Okay.
I don't think that there were any like bodies found in that, but I know that's what Jaws is based on. But a series of incidents that happened in Sydney, Australia in 1935 when a human arm was regurgitated by a captive 3.5-meter tiger shark. Subsequently, it resulted in a murder investigation.
When is Shark Week?
Oh, it's in July/August.
This is the case you're going to do. There you go. Okay. During Shark Week.
Sold.
Okay. Let's get into the last 3 infamous cases.
Yes.
Number 3 is the disappearance of Amelia Earhart. Okay. So this was location, Pacific Ocean. Date, 1937. Amelia, a pioneer aviator, disappeared during an attempt to circumnavigate the globe. Mm-hmm. She and her navigator, Fred Noonan, were last heard from over the central Pacific Ocean. Extensive searches failed to locate her or her plane, but there were numerous conspiracies saying that she crash landed on an island and that she was held prisoner or something. It's pretty crazy.
You know, they thought they found her plane a couple months ago.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's like the satellite, whatever sonar radio frequency that kind of looks into the various, you can look into the depth. And so there's the shape of a plane of where she was thought to have disappeared. Mm-hmm. And it's on the bottom of the ocean floor. Wow. And it said a South Carolina search team claimed to have found a sonar image of her Lockheed Electra plane. And not only her legacy, but also the achievements of the women in aviation since that infamous flight. Yeah.
Oh, I got to look that up.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Next one. The Black Dahlia murder.
Yes.
Location, Los Angeles, California. Elizabeth Short, posthumously known as the Black Dahlia, was found murdered in LA. Her body was horrifically mutilated, and the case became the most sensational murder in American history. And I just want to, it's not mentioned in my top 5, but I just want to give a shout out to John Benet Ramsey. Mm-hmm. You know, that's another infamous Unsolved.
Yes, of course.
Now, the final one is freaky.
Oh.
The mystery of the Mary Celeste. Do you know that? Crazy.
Is it a ship?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Location, Atlantic Ocean. Mm-hmm. Date, 1872. Mm-hmm. The Mary Celeste was an American merchant ship discovered adrift and deserted in the Atlantic Ocean. The ship was in seaworthy condition and its cargo was intact, and there was no sign of struggle, but the crew was never found.
Oh.
The fate of the crew remains unknown still today, and it sparks major theories and conspiracies about piracy, mutiny, and also the supernatural.
Oh. That sounds fascinating.
Yes. All right. So, before we get into the movies, I want to give you your last question. You ready?
Okay.
All right. We did this case.
Oh, okay.
The Philadelphia boy in a box refers to the body of a never identified, well, he is identified.
He's now, yeah.
Yeah. At the time, he was an identified victim. He was between 4 and 6 years old, found in a cardboard box on February 25th, 1957. The police traced the box by its original contents, like the markings on the box. What box was it? What was the original markings on the box? What was it from? Well, the markings on the box was for an item, but obviously the item wasn't in the box. It was the boy's body. So what was that item?
I don't remember.
Okay. You ready for the 4? All right. Could it be a box for a baby bassinet from JCPenney? Could it be a Singer sewing machine? Could it be a washing machine from Sears? Or could it be a box for a dollhouse from Montgomery Ward?
Montgomery Ward. That's a throwback. Yeah, I don't remember. I know the washing machine is going to be too big. So the dollhouse, maybe. Sewing machine, I don't think so. Is it dollhouse?
No.
Oh.
It's the first one. It's the baby bassinet from JCPenney.
Oh, the one I was
That's
like,
close
oh, no.
enough. Close enough. Okay.
Fail.
All right.
I sucked this go round.
No, you did not suck. It's okay. So I have to mention some movies
Mm-hmm.
of unsolved cases. Now, number one, of course, is Zodiac in 2007. Have you seen this movie?
Yes. Is that the one with Jake Gyllenhaal?
It is. And
Yes.
obviously this explores the infamous Zodiac killer who terrorized Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, Memories of a Murder in 2003. Now, this is a foreign film from South Korea, and it's based on the country's first serial killings.
Korea?
Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Number three is The Black Dahlia in 2006. The movie dives into the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Short. Number four, Gone Girl in 2014.
Yes.
Have you seen this?
Love that movie. I've seen it
Is it
several
good?
times.
I
Yes.
gotta watch it. I
can't
watch
believe
it.
I haven't seen it.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It's great. It's phew.
Really? Okay. Who's in it?
Neil Patrick Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, Ben Affleck plays the husband. The chick.
Oh,
who
wait a
plays the
minute.
wife. Gone Girl.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where the wife was pretending to be dead, or she was like a mastermind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
She left and was pretending to have been kidnapped, and then she showed up all of a sudden with, like, strolling up the neighborhood with, like, blood all over her body, but
Right.
the husband knew that she was
Yeah.
making shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he, you know what, his like rendition of his character in that movie kind of reminded me of the way Scott Peterson acted during the investigation for Lacey. Like very like blasé and not really like the things he Teddy,
Well,
go over there.
Yeah, and I... Hi, Teddy!
Freaking cat. Teddy.
Yeah, so,
Here he is.
yes, in a way, but it's also like, come here, Teddy.
Do you see him?
No. Uh-uh.
There.
Oh, I see his tail. He's showing his tail.
Go.
I could see that, where it was very similar to Scott Peterson and his behaviors, but I think that's also because it was probably only less than 10 years after that case. They probably capitalized on Scott Peterson's behaviors
Yeah.
to use that for Ben Affleck's character.
Yeah.
And his wife was Rosamund Pike.
She's an amazing
Rosamund
actress.
Pike. Yes, she's great. She was fantastic in that movie. And then, yeah, Neil Patrick Harris, amongst others.
I think I've watched it, but I can revisit that.
I've seen it several times. It's a great movie. It came out in 2014. It's really good.
Okay. Now, the last one is The Changeling in 2008, directed by Clint Eastwood. This film is based on the Wineville chicken coop murders, focused on the mother's search for her missing son. This is with Angelina Jolie. They say it's a true story. I guess it is a true story, where they switched out the kid.
Never seen it. Okay, so I'm looking at pictures, and now I remember the
Yeah.
promo for it, but I never
Like
saw
all the
it.
men in the room were like, "This is your son," and she's like, "This isn't my son." Well, this is your son. You're hysterical.
Yeah.
You're hysterical. This is your son, and she was just
Yes, I remember that. Based on the Wineville chicken coop murders in Mira Loma, California, 1928.
yeah, it's a long time ago. So
Yeah.
that is my intro on Unsolved. So I got a little bit of the cases, a little movie action, and then a little trivia.
Well, I won't
Sprinkle.
quiz you on this one.
Okay.
But I do want to hear what your theories are at the end. But there's not a lot to go off of, so I'll be interested to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
So not only is the story a chatter request, as I mentioned, but it is also a huge crime chat link to my family's origins in upstate New York.
Oh.
As well as ties to Southwest Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So once I dug into the story and the locations, it was no surprise why my auntie and chatter, Gia, requested the story. It's unsolved. It's dark, and it's still a mystery. Nestled in New York's Five Finger Lakes area, between Cayuga Lake and Seneca Lake, lies the small, quiet village of Ovid, Seneca County, New York. And when I say small, I mean there were 534 residents according to the 2020 census.
Oh, wow. Everybody knows everybody's business.
Yeah. It populated less than a half a square mile
Oh, wow.
in the village. But Ovid Village is not only within the town of Ovid, it also has small portions in the town of Romulus, as well as Geneva. Now, technically, I was born in Geneva, New York. But we lived in Seneca Falls, which is only a 20-minute drive to Ovid Village.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're going back to your origin.
Back to my roots.
Yeah.
It's spring break 1985, and a young, beautiful Minnesota college student was vacationing in Captiva Island, Florida. Very close to where you are and where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Within 6 months, Kristin O'Connell was brutally murdered and found in a cornfield in Ovid Village, New York on August 16th, 1985. But her case is still unsolved, not due to the relentless efforts to request DNA testing as advancements of technology have occurred to try and identify her killer, but by the numerous roadblocks the state of New York have provided.
Gotta love New York.
Yeah. So Kristin M. O'Connell, she was born January 12, 1965 in Minnesota to parents Michael and Phyllis O'Connell. She had one brother, Kyle, who was 5 years younger than she was. Her father, Michael, described his daughter as fun-loving but had a serious side. She was somewhat religious and had put a lot of thought of actually becoming a nun.
Wow.
And Michael said she was just a beautiful, fun-loving girl. Kristin had a love of horses, weddings, and people. Many of the newspaper articles that I read actually described her as an attractive woman resembling
beautiful.
Brooke Shields.
Stunning.
What do you think?
Stunning. Yeah. She's absolutely beautiful.
Kristin volunteered at a women's shelter during high school, and Phyllis described her daughter as, quote, a gift from God and the daughter every mother would want,
Aww,
end quote.
It's beautiful.
Kristin's aunt, Barbara Bear, who is Phyllis's sister, said, quote, she was a trustworthy girl. There were so many friends and so many people who adored her. She never thought anyone would harm her, end quote. Kristin was a 20-year-old college student studying hotel and restaurant management at the University of Wisconsin-Stout in Menominee, Wisconsin. I think I got that right. On March 1st, 1985, during spring break, Kristin met 18-year-old James Vermeesh in Captiva Island, Florida. He was from upstate New York, but was working during spring break as a waiter at the time on Captiva Island. They kept in touch. It was a long-distance relationship. They had letters, phone calls, and at the time, Kristin was interested in getting to know him better. She was 20, he was 18, so she was a couple years older than him. He had just graduated from high school. She told her mother that he was charming and nice, and Jim ended up inviting her up to the Finger Lakes area before her junior year started in college. Phyllis's first instinct was to say no, but her husband Mike reminded her that Kristin wasn't a child anymore. She was an adult and could make her own decisions. And Phyllis said, quote, he was right. Chris always had been sensible, and I trusted her judgment, end quote. Phyllis and Kristin had a very trusting relationship, and because of this, Phyllis did let her daughter go, one, on the spring break trip during her sophomore year, but then two, up to New York to kind of get to know Jim a little bit better. A week before Kristin left to New York, she went to her mother's room, sat down on the bed, and Phyllis recalled she would say, Mom, I just want you to know how much I love you. And she said, well, I love you too, sis. Sis was the name that they called Kristin because she was the older sister to her brother. That's kind of common, sis. Mother Phyllis recalled that, quote, she was a beautiful soul. She would spend hours together discussing her future plans, dreams, even her last boyfriends, and we had a mother-daughter relationship that I cherished, end quote. So on August 11th, 1985, Kristin was getting ready to head to the airport, and Phyllis recalled how excited Kristin was. Quote, she came in, kissed me, and said, Mom, don't worry, everything's fine. I will be fine, end quote. Now, while Phyllis didn't necessarily like the idea, she did trust that her daughter would be safe. Like Kristin's mother, Michael, her father, was also protective of Kristin to the point where he actually was the one that made the arrangements for her to get out there. So instead of flying into New York, he actually had her fly to Boston, where a business colleague picked her up from the airport. She stayed the night, and then the business colleague agreed to drive her to the Syracuse area, where she met Jim and his friend David.
A good dad.
Yeah. He wanted to, I don't want to say control it, but he wanted to make sure that he knew her travel plans in light of something were to happen.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, she stayed the night in Boston, and the following day, August 12th, the friend of Michael's drove Kristin to DeWitt, New York, which is just outside Syracuse, and she met up with Jim Vermeesh. Jim was with a friend, David Chamberlain, and David drove the three of them to Ovid, New York, in his white Cadillac. Kristin stayed with Jim in his rented trailer and was scheduled to fly back home the following Friday, August 17th, when she would return to start her junior year of college. On August 13th, Kristin walked to a local convenience store called The Big M, apparently to get Band-Aids for her ankles. I don't know necessarily what that's about. But that evening, Kristin, Jim, and a few other friends went to a movie around 8 p.m. After they returned, Kristin went for a walk. Shortly after midnight into August 14th, two friends who were staying at the trailer grew concerned because Kristin wasn't back yet. So they went out to look for her. They reported that they heard a scream but could not determine its direction. A family living nearby also heard the scream but assumed it came from the Golden Buck restaurant nearby.
Oh my God.
Where the trailer was, there was a restaurant that was, it's pretty much like right next door. It's very small. Wow. Everybody knows everybody. And it's funny because in Seneca Falls, we had a very similar restaurant to the Golden Buck restaurant that was on Cayuga Lake, and it was called the Deerhead Inn. I went back. The last time I went back to New York was probably been about 6 years ago. It's still there.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah. My mom worked at there. My grandparents would go there. Everybody knew.
Is it good food?
It's the food that I had was great. It's like diner.
It's like diner food. Okay. Because those places, I love those places because they have a million things on the menu and they're all good. Yeah. Just don't get the lobster. Don't order the lobster and you're good.
Why would you order lobster into upstate New York? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Just let the thing live at that point.
So they go to a movie. After they returned, Kristin went for a walk. People couldn't find her, right? They heard the screams. Nobody called police after hearing the screams. It was just after midnight.
Wow.
By 1 p.m. on August 14th, Kristin, Jim, and a couple other friends went swimming at the Lodi Point Beach on Seneca Lake. Investigators report that at this time, several of Jim's friends were actually bashing Kristin. Not too sure what that was about, but Kristin that day did call her mother. She sounded upset and said that she wanted to come home early, but didn't really tell her mother why.
Yeah, so they didn't like Kristin, is what you're saying? They didn't... When you say bashing, what do you mean by bash? Verbally, just talking shit about her?
They were probably, picking at her. But what Phyllis was saying is she thought that Kristin witnessed something or saw something, and that might have been illegal, and was probably you need to go to the police, or this is wrong. She was very morally, if that makes sense. Okay. She followed the law. She was a good girl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, Phyllis kind of got a sense that something happened to make Kristin want to come home early. When Phyllis asked her what was wrong, she said, "Oh, never mind. Don't worry about it. I'm fine." But she did say she wanted to leave Ovid a day early. Phyllis later surmised that she thought Kristin might have seen something or discovered maybe that she really didn't like Jim. This isn't going to work.
Right.
By 5 p.m., they were still at the lake, and the group that she was with saw a local kid kind of joyriding in one of their vehicles. They confronted the kid and started to mess with him, and Kristin intervened and basically was leave the kid alone. He's not doing anything. Just, leave him alone.
Right.
She really had a really good heart.
Yeah.
By 9 p.m., Kristin, Jim, and his friends go to another friend's house to play pool. They're kind of partying, that kind of thing. They stayed about an hour and returned to Jim's trailer near the Golden Buck restaurant. And on the way home, they picked up some beer, snacks, and stuff, and kind of continued the party from their friend's house back to the trailer.
I was going to ask, was there alcohol involved in this whole
Yes, but she wasn't drinking.
Okay. So okay.
Like I said, she was a good girl.
Yeah.
At 11 o'clock that night, Kristin engages in some conversation with one of the other girls who was staying at the trailer and was like, Jim invited me to Ovid, but he hasn't really been talking to me. He's kind of been ignoring me. I don't understand. So the girl told Kristin that Jim actually had a girlfriend, and that might have changed things for him. And he was actually going to tell her after Kristin got there that, hey, I have a girlfriend.
He waited for her to travel to visit with him.
Right?
And didn't.
Yes.
Oh, that's shitty. That's not nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So 30, 40 minutes later, Jim is like, I'm going to go get some pizza. Hey, Kristin, you want to come? Kristin's like, no. At this point, she's kind of maybe defeated. Maybe that was around the time that she called her mom, was like, something's going on. But he did leave Kristin at the trailer with his friends. They were drinking. They were smoking pot. Kristin was not. At this time, she's like, I'm going to go for a walk. Apparently, she liked to do the night before she did that, and she did it again. She left the trailer. But she left to go on her walk barefoot and without her purse. She just was like, I'm out. By 11:45 p.m., Jim returned and learned that Kristin went for a walk without her shoes and without her purse. David Chamberlain, the guy that drove them from the Syracuse area to Ovid, who was just 17 at the time, he said there were no fights, there were no arguments at the party, and, quote, she just went for a walk and didn't come back. When she left, no one figured anything was wrong, end quote. Now, around midnight, 2 witnesses reported to New York State Police that they saw a girl walking west along the shoulder of West Seneca Street. Ed McDonald, who was the witness, said that he saw Kristin walking along Route 139 as he headed to the American Legion for a beer. I got some maps that I'm going to be posting on the Patreon, but basically it's all right there. Like, American Legion is right here, Golden Buck, the trailer, where her body was found,
right,
where she called her mom at the payphone.
Wow. Well, you think she was maybe running from the situation? Maybe something was bad?
I don't know. I think she did actually go out for a walk.
Okay.
And I'll kind of get to it a little bit. But at the time, Ed McDonald, he also saw a car moving at a walking speed kind of right beside her. And it looked like somebody from inside, a man from the inside, was talking to her through the vehicle's open passenger window.
Wow.
So like kind of hollering out through the passenger window talking to her. Ed said, quote, we came up the hill and saw her walking on the road. I thought it was funny that she would be walking out of town alone. She didn't seem alarmed, and there was another car that was going slow right behind the first car, end quote. So there's now 2 cars that are kind of like, but the second car also could have been waiting for the chance to go around if another car is oncoming. You know what I mean? They could have just been waiting. It doesn't necessarily mean there were 2 cars. There was for sure the one car that was driving at a walking speed talking to her. Now, another witness actually said they saw 2 white teenagers that looked like they were following Kristin that night on foot. They were described as thin young men. One was about 5 foot 10 inches tall, and the other one was about 6 foot tall. One had hair that brushed the top of his ears, while the other one had shoulder-length hair. So about an hour later, 12:50 a.m. August 15th, a witness reported hearing 3 terrifying screams emanating from what they called Lover's Lane, about 700 feet from the home. Shortly after, the witness heard a car or a pickup start up. Kind of, you could hear it kind of rummaging along, and the vehicle left the Lover's Lane area. Headlights were kind of flickering through the trees, and then turned down a nearby street called Wilson Road. 1:30 a.m., 2 local kids were seen walking eastward toward Ovid Village along Route 139 by a passerby. So beforehand, 2 teenagers were seen walking, and afterward, 2 teenagers were seen walking. Okay. Very close to the location where Kristin's body was actually found. By 2 a.m., Jim realizes she hasn't come back yet, so they go back out to look for her. And then what I read said back out to go look for her, which means that he might have been looking for her before. But part of me is like, did he go get pizza? Like, did he go and like see her walking? And maybe was he the vehicle that was trying to talk to her as she was walking? I don't know. There's no evidence of that. And apparently he's no longer considered a suspect. But Jim and his friends go back out and look for Kristin. By 9 a.m. on August 15th, Jim states that he attempted to contact state police to report Kristin missing, but the trailer had no phone.
You drive there. What the hell?
Yeah. And it wasn't until 1 p.m. that he actually reported Kristin missing. She had been missing for about 12 hours at this point. 4 p.m., a New York State trooper took the missing persons report from Jim and went and retrieved Kristin's ID from her purse at the trailer. Due to heavy rain, they did not commence a search until the following morning. Now, the day that Kristin disappeared, that morning on August 15th, would have been the evening of August 14th in Minnesota. The next morning when Phyllis gets up, she gets ready to go to work. She has this sense that something is weird, that she couldn't just shake. Like she had that sixth sense kind of going on. She went to work. And when she came home, by that time, her husband had got the phone call that their daughter was missing. Oh my God. So it was like this, like she had that feeling in the morning, went to work, came back home, and by this time, missing persons report was out, got her next of kin, and told her parents that she was missing.
Yeah. I mean, moms, if you're close with your kid, you have that maternal intuition about the connection, I think. And if it's like severed, you feel it.
It's like twins.
Right.
Twins, feel that way sometimes, So Phyllis said, quote, I could tell Mike was scared, a man who had always been my rock. This man who was never frightened. He was the most confident individual I had ever met, but now his face radiated fear. Stark, raw fear.
You're giving me chills.
This is heartbreaking. This story is heartbreaking. Now, Kristin's disappearance didn't make any sense to her parents either. The fact that she was seen walking barefoot and without a purse, any kind of identification, like that just didn't make sense to them at all.
In a strange town that she doesn't not familiar with. Like
town.
it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's even as small as the town was, it's still in the middle. It's still a country. Right. Like it is really the countryside. There's vineyards and cornfields.
Yeah.
And that's what you got in upstate New York.
Yeah.
Besides the beautiful lakes. So on August 16th at 8 a.m., the following day after Kristin was reported missing, a local search party began to look for her in the area surrounding the trailer and the Golden Buck restaurant. This included about 90 police and local firefighters who formed a human chain and kind of combed through the area. New York State began also taking statements from the kids who were staying at Jim's trailer. An initial search of the trailer was completed and Kristin's belongings were searched. I mean, nothing of evidentiary value, but 5:11 p.m., the search is still ongoing. A team of local firefighters found Kristin's naked, rain-soaked body in an overgrown 300-acre cornfield less than a quarter of a mile from where she was staying. She suffered multiple stab wounds to the chest, and her throat had been so severely cut it almost decapitated her.
Oh my God.
She had no alcohol in her system, and there were no signs of sexual assault. She was pronounced dead by the Seneca County coroner, Michael McLaughlin, and it was estimated that Kristin's time of death was at 1 a.m. on August 15th.
Was that during...
right around the time that those screams were heard.
That's what I was going to ask.
The blood-curdling screams, yes. Yep. The crime scene was secured, and it was searched. Police collected plenty of physical evidence from the crime scene, including clothing, fingernail clippings, blood samples. Now, at the time, DNA was not a forensic option to them. They could probably only determine blood type and then gender, the chromosomes like XX or XY. But they still had the intuition to collect any and all evidence possible. Phyllis told Dateline, because the story was on Dateline, that she vividly remembers the moment her husband called her to break the news that their daughter's body had been found. Because as soon as they found out she was missing, Michael left Minnesota and flew out to New York.
Yeah.
He made contact with police. He was there within a day, but that day is also the day that they found Kristin's body. He calls back to Phyllis. She said, quote, "My heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest. I could not breathe. It felt like the room was suffocating me. Then I just broke down and sobs," end quote. Oh, my God. I'm getting chills.
Yeah. That's breaking my heart.
So August 17th, around 10:30 a.m., police returned to the crime scene and searched for potential knives or weapons that might have been used, but none were found. They searched like ditches and in the cornfield. Like this cornfield was apparently like completely overgrown, very easy to get lost in. Children of the corn vibes for me, you know. At this time, Jim, he was working at a place called Ginny Lee Cafe and Vineyard in Lodi, New York, and 2 days later, it's all over the news. I went back and looked at through newspapers.com some of the old like articles and stuff when it first went out, like when it first was discovered. It was all over the news. So Jim, when he was approached by reporters, said, quote, "The police told me not to talk to the press," end quote, and then drove off on his motorcycle. Which, I mean, okay. Yeah. Like, I get it. By 4 p.m. on the 17th, private investigators were informed to be on the lookout for a blue Fiat with Florida plates. 2 males were heard the night before at the Golden Buck restaurant saying, quote, "They should have cut her up and put her in the lake," end quote.
Oh, boy.
The men were wearing work clothes and had hunting knives on their belts. So that was the 17th that private investigators found out about this. The 16th is when they were overheard saying this, but it was also out in the news by the 16th. So it could have been some schmuck being like, they should have just cut her up and put her in the lake. Their body would never have been found. So it could have been just that versus somebody saying, we should have cut her up and put her in the lake, you know. Police also posted flyers with Kristin's picture on it at the American Legion, which, again, is like right there, and a few of the other locations around the village asking for more information. The O'Connell family did hire a private investigator, and his name was Sheldon Furlong. He was from Buffalo to help look into the daughter's death. I'm not clear if this is the same investigator, but I did see another article that said the family's hired PI quit after receiving 2 threatening phone calls. Phyllis, mom, said, quote, "The caller said that if he didn't get off the case, his family would be in jeopardy," end quote.
Wow.
And I don't know if that means they hired another private investigator. That's the only thing that I was able to find.
Wow.
About a week later, police got another tip. It was called in on the recorded line from their tip line. The caller told the New York State Police to look at a green Chevy on Main Street in Waterloo. All these places, like, yeah, I've had family that has lived there before. Right, Gia? Now, in the call, they didn't leave their name, but said, quote, "Open the trunk, you'll find what you want," end quote. Now, according to the transcript, the caller repeated the information and said, quote, "I'm getting out of town because I told him not to do it. I told him not to do it. I'm getting out of town," end quote.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
But I will say this. Further research that I looked into the story, the green Chevy Nova is actually what it was, and it was determined to be a false lead. Yeah. There was nothing that came. I have a picture of the Chevy Nova too. So there was nothing that came out of it. But it was determined that it was like either a false call or a false lead or something like that. Anyway. The tape of the call, though, was released to the public 10 years after, in 1995. Then followed a dedicated 7-person team who was assigned to the case. They read the case, reread the case, redid interviews, retraced leads. But by this time, in 1995, Kristin's father, Michael, had passed away from cancer, so he never got to see justice for his daughter.
Oh, God.
Come 1998, the files of the unsolved case started to build up so much that it would fill the bed of a truck 13 years later. The senior investigator at the time, Vincent Snyder, said, quote, "We've always believed that this case was solvable, but this recent information very honestly makes me believe that we may be getting close to making an arrest in the future," end quote. Now, at this point, police received numerous leads, interviewed more than 200 people, including other inmates, traveled to various different states in order to obtain information, include or exclude information. Fast forward 9 years, November 1st, 2007, forensic investigator Gary Veeder, he was handling Kristin's evidence and processing it. He was cited for misconduct, where an investigation revealed that 1/3 of the cases that Veeder worked on had serious problems with the evidence, like mislabeled, mishandled, or misinterpreted because they wanted to get people arrested, like false information, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, too, when that happens, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before, like they just completely throw out the cases. Especially it's been somebody who's been convicted under this person who testified in court to say, this was my findings and this is all of my years of experience. Of course, they're going to go off his word because of that. But when it comes to find out that there's misconduct involved, every single case that person has touched gets reevaluated.
That's the case that you went over. We mentioned him before, Michael Peterson.
Yes. Michael Peterson case. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Exactly. So 2 years after that, June 20th, 2009, Seneca County investigators partnered with the district attorney's office. The victim's family, with New York Senator Chuck Schumer and Minnesota Senator Kami Klobuchar, they petitioned to get DNA tested by a renowned team of Amsterdam-based DNA experts. By 2009, I mean, that was, almost 25 years later, they would have had this technology, right? And all this DNA capabilities. I think even by then it was mitochondrial DNA would have been able to have been found too. The investigators were even promised up to $40,000 from the state to support this. However, the New York State Department of Health blocked the request.
What is wrong with New York?
Girl.
So much.
So 2 months later, in August of 2009, the Seneca County District Attorney's Office offered $10,000 reward to any information leading into Kristin's case.
Yeah.
A couple months after that, December of 2009, a similar request for outside DNA analysis was submitted to New York State Department of Health. And at the time, New York Senator Mike Nozzolio and Senator Chuck Schumer, with Minnesota Senator Amy Cabot-Gabula, supported the efforts of then District Attorney Barry Porsche and New York State investigator Jeff Arnold to use touch DNA technology offered by a Dutch team of touch DNA experts. Now, touch DNA is a technique that can detect very tiny amounts of cells behind from a person's touch on a body, on clothing, on it's more available where your oils are also left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Richard and Selma Eikelenboom are a famed husband and wife forensic team from the Netherlands and have a track record of solving very complicated crimes, and they actually applied for a license for New York State. Now, when the Eichelblums accepted the case, the investigators were like, okay, cool, you've applied for your license, we're crossed our biggest hurdle, we're going to get this resolved. Now, this request was denied by New York State Commissioner of Health, Howard Zucker, because the lab was not certified by the New York Health Department. Now, Kristin's brother, Kyle, he was quoted in an Ithaca newspaper saying, they're railroading for their own purposes. There could be no other reason. Now, Kyle was only 15 years old when Kristin died. He said they've been covering something up. It's professional envy, and they're afraid that there's going to be a bunch more cases. They haven't come up with a viable reason why this should not be allowed. So, I mean, it very well could open up a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Like, did they have a serial killer and didn't know it?
Yeah.
Because they were afraid to link it to other cases?
Oh, yeah. Somebody on the force or maybe in...
Look, and my mother's adoptive father, retired state police,
right.
New York State Police, New York State Trooper. And it is a very small community up there in that area. Everybody knows everybody.
Everything, yeah.
So if somebody would have fucked up, they would have covered it up. I know that.
Yeah, I totally see that. Totally see that.
Yeah. So in 2012, New York State Police rejected a new offer by a New York certified DNA lab to test the materials, and in this case to see if they could find any DNA on any of the evidence that was collected. Seneca County District Attorney Mark Sinkowitz never returned a phone call or responded to an email from Kristin's mother. Like, why aren't you doing this? Like, why aren't you testing for this? Police have never named a suspect. But in 2013, two Ovid residents, Doug Zammit and Mike Swank, believed that they were actually the focus of the investigation. They were so upset that they painted a fence outside of Zammit's house with a public message expressing their innocence and asking the lead investigators to believe their alibi. Now, Zammit said that he felt they were suspects because his stepsister told investigators both Zammit and Swank were covered in blood the night Kristin was brutally murdered in 1985. However, Zammit said he agreed to talk to police, and he explained that he had a pig roast a couple days after. The blood was from killing the pig after he, Swank, and another friend had bought it. Swank stated in a 2013 interview, quote, "We tried being nice, for lack of better terms, tried cooperating. You get told, if you don't want to talk to us, you're hiding something. You talk to us, you're lying to us. How can you win here?" End quote. Zammit said that he specifically remembered that day because they killed the pig in the back of a El Camino, and his brother came up from Virginia that very day. So it was a very significant day for them to remember, I killed a pig on this day.
Yeah.
Zammit actually now regularly roasts pigs and has his own, I guess it's called a pig spit, where he sells pigs, like roasted pigs. Even while some of their memories are not perfect to that day, the men do want people to know that they did not kill Kristin. Both men have offered their DNA.
Okay.
Swank has provided it, and Zammit said that he offered his DNA, but the police never got back to him to actually collect it. Now, this has been 11 years ago. I'm not sure if they've actually collected Zammit's DNA. But the men did still fear that they could be arrested. Zammit said, quote, "I feel that they're lost in this case. They're investigating me, they're all over me, and you don't even really know where to go." End quote. So they felt like they were just like picking at straws, like, you know.
I'm surprised he stayed in the town. I'm surprised he didn't get the hell out of there because, I mean, what kind of life are you going to live? Everybody's looking at you like you're guilty.
Well, and there's a video that's going to be on the references page on the Patreon, but basically the video shows they spray painted this huge fence, and it was like, "We did not kill Kristin."
Wow.
And I mean, I believe him. Like, at first I was kind of like,
well, the whole pig thing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that could be a valid excuse. It doesn't mean they didn't. But it could have been like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, especially if they had a pig roast a couple days later, and it takes a couple days to roast a pig when you do it right and you do it underground and that kind of thing. Like, it takes a while to roast a pig.
I guess the unorthodox thing that not normal is that they killed it in the car and they're covered in its blood. So I'm thinking, like, if you're going to kill a pig, you're going to have a change of clothes or maybe a plastic suit, a hazmat suit. And you're not going to do it in
Girl, that was 1985.
Who does it in the car?
But, you know, in El Camino, it's like the car with, like, the bed, right?
Oh, okay. All right, it's like a pickup cut.
It's like a pickup car. You know, the El Camino. It's got, like, the two seats in the front, the open bed in the back. So it's like a pickup truck, right? But, I mean, all you have to do is get the hose and spray that shit out
Right.
and it's clean.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense. That poor pig.
Yeah.
That poor piggy.
That's why I think the El Camino was important too, because it's not like they're going to do it in a car.
Right.
It was in the bed. Yeah.
And also, that's a very like no like that's a very like distinguishable car. So if that car was following her on route one whatever, you would notice that car. It's
139.
not a normal
Yeah.
looking car. Okay.
Yeah. And it was weird too, is I looked, there's a lot of research out here, but a lot of it is very repetitive and redundant, so there's not anything that's necessarily distinctive. I watched interviews, like there's an interactive map of where you could see where her body was found, where Jim lived, where she called her mother, where the Golden Buck restaurant was, like, and how small it is, like it's very close to one another.
Yeah.
A majority of the information was very redundant, so it was difficult to find the descriptions of the vehicle. Like, what was the description of the vehicle that was... And they've never released Jim's information out into the public to say, was that actually Jim? Went to get pizza, saw her walking,
Right.
Came up, talked to her, and was like, hey, are you okay? Do you want to ride back? Like...
Yeah, and did they confirm with the pizza place that he got pizza? Like, this seems like... Oh, because they didn't release any of that, you're saying.
Right.
Ah.
Yes. And that's part of the issue. So, police actually could not comment on what Swank or Zamet had to say because they cited that it is an ongoing investigation. And it is currently unsolved, active investigation. In August of 2020, the O'Connell family lawyer, who had a background as a prosecutor, began to work with New York State Police to get the DNA testing done in an effort to solve the murder and like make steps forward. But I've, again, not been able to find any resolution to this. And it could be that it's still protected under investigative privilege. So 2022, the reward now doubles to $20,000. In March of last year, a new docuseries came out highlighting Kristin's murder, which was produced by Kyle's childhood classmate, Christopher Pavlik. He obviously knew Kyle and had kind of a direct link to the family. Now, Christopher and his team offered to provide a cold case team and resources to state police to help them solve the case or make steps moving forward in the case.
Right.
They were going to work on the case free of charge just to see if they can help make movements forward. They even offered DNA testing from a facility in Utah to help identify DNA or, anything that could help solve the murder. New York State Police told Christopher Pavlik they were not interested in their help. Pavlik admitted he was frustrated because he felt this was a case that can be solved with forensics. State Police released a statement in response to rejecting this last year and said, quote, sharing such information could jeopardize the integrity of the investigation, end quote. Now, I can see it from, as a police, right? I could see that there's certain things that you don't want to put out into the public, especially if you interview somebody and they know a detail that's not been released to the public. How do they know that, right? So that can kind of give a direct line. So there's certain things that you do want to make sure that you control to be being released out into the public.
Right.
However, I think they're being a little too cautious. Like, next year's going to be 40 years.
Yeah, I think they should,
you know what I mean?
Make a plea to the public and say, here's the evidence. Like, do you guys know anything? Like, I feel like they're missing out on a lot of leads. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so from what I saw as far as Christopher Pavlik and his docuseries, it wasn't out. It's maybe still in the works. And that was March of last year when the interviews were done.
Oh, wow. So this is really recent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So police believe that it's likely more than one person that was involved in the homicide. And this is according to the investigator Jeffrey Arnold. They do not think that Kristin was targeted, even though Phyllis felt Kristin may have been murdered over something that she saw or witnessed. You know what I mean? Like, she saw something, witnessed something, so they're like, oh, we gotta kill her. Phyllis thought that might have been the case by how Kristin was acting on the phone when Kristin called her, and that was the last time you talked to her. And they don't say why, but they do believe it was a actual target of opportunity. And it was committed by a complete stranger. Rumors persisted over the near 4 decades of the small town, basically saying that somebody knows what happened to Kristin, and somebody knows who's responsible for it. And I completely agree. Absolutely. Now, in the nearly 40 years since Kristin's death, despite efforts of investigating 2,000 leads at this point, state police are adamant at pursuing new leads in the case. They have not made, again, a single arrest in connection with the murder. They haven't identified any suspects openly, but the case still does remain open. if it were ever to be moved from an unsolved active case to a cold case, this is where police said that they would allow outsiders to come in, look at the case files, and see what they can do.
Wow.
But apparently, according to New York State, it has to go from a no longer active case into a cold case where outsiders would be able to come in and help.
Interesting.
But for now, like last year when they were doing the stock use areas and they're like, hey, we want to help.
Yeah.
We're working free of charge. Like, this is free labor. And they denied it, but that was because the case is still active.
Yeah.
Technically.
I feel like there should be like, I understand there's no the statute of limitations for murder, but like I feel like the lieutenant or the captain should say, okay, we had 40 years in this case. We need to change. Nothing is happening. Like, this is kind of a dead case. And I think that the leadership should change up whatever they're doing.
Something needs to happen. Like, something needs to shake and move. Yeah, to make it shake and move, right? Mm-hmm. So Phyllis O'Connell, she's now 83 years old, but has always been thankful that the police have not given up in the case of her murdered daughter. When Phyllis thinks about how her daughter died in a field, alone, nearly decapitated, it still scars her to this day. She has tirelessly fought for justice in her daughter's case, and it seems, she said, like only yesterday that Kristin had kissed her goodbye. Quote, "This has affected our family terribly. My son will never get married. He was only 15, dealing with the death of his sister," end quote. And then Phyllis went on to say that she has no grandchildren and only the memories of her daughter.
Oh my God.
Phyllis described Kristin as loving, caring, and responsible. She said, quote, "We had a great relationship. I think we only argued one time. She was the one that all of the boys wanted to marry." I mean, and you can see why. Look at this picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since that day, Phyllis has continued to fight for justice, even visiting the town of Ovid on numerous occasions. She was worried that when she passes, no one will continue to fight for answers. She said, quote, "I promised Kristin till the day I die, I will be after who killed her," end quote. But she said while she still has hope, and the hope is what keeps her alive today, she just hopes that the case will be resolved before she actually does pass. Now, Barb, Kristin's aunt and Phyllis' sister, said, quote, "She was the type of person that wanted to sit and chat about anything and everything going on in their lives. She was just like that girl." The family and the police believe that the small village of Ovid, someone still knows what happens to Kristin.
Yeah.
Phyllis said, quote, "These are small towns. These are small communities. And I know there are people who know. I know they're there. They may be afraid to come forward, but don't keep secrets. Don't keep something like this going, because then maybe the next person might be your daughter, and you will know the kind of pain it is to lose a daughter, and especially through murder," end quote.
I know. They just gave me chills again.
Yeah. So there's a Facebook group called Justice for Kristin O'Connell. There's another group out there, I think it's the Murder Kristin O'Connell, but I think the official one is Justice for Kristin O'Connell, where you can keep track of any progress that the case that has been made. And as of right now, it is still an open investigation, as I mentioned. So anyone with information is encouraged to call New York State Police Troop E at 585-398-4100 or email the information to nysvicap@troopers.ny.gov. Now, I will also say there's a website called uncovered.com. And basically it's for unsolved cases to put the information out there. And there's one on Kristin O'Connell, and it has a ton of resources that you can turn in tips, you can make contributions, you can research the actual case. I used a lot of it for this story. But there's also a 4-part series from the True Crime podcast called Method and Madness about the Kristin O'Connell murder. And I mentioned earlier that it was also covered by Dateline. So a lot of resources out there about the story. And I just want to say, thanks, Gia.
Yes.
It's been a horrible, horrible story. And I think that Gia still lived up there around that time frame. But we moved to Florida like the year that it happened. So we were already down. So by the time Kristin came down to Captiva Island, we were there. We were in Cape Coral. We were in Fort Myers area. Like, we lived right there. And yeah, it's just so weird. But
yeah,
what do you think?
I think that's a really heartbreaking case.
I know.
Thank you, Gia. Rest in peace, Kristin. And her dad. That breaks my heart that the dad passed away without ever knowing.
Yeah.
What's baffling is that they kept on turning down DNA resources. Like, it's been 40 years. I think that's where like somebody should come in and say, you can only turn down these resources twice. You have 2 times. After
Well,
that, it's mandatory.
yeah. Well, I
Something.
mean, so there's policies is one thing, right? Trying to keep control of the case is another.
Yeah.
Like, you stay really, really quiet. Apparently, they have been talking to Phyllis, and they fill Phyllis in as much as they can about what they have. And I'm sure that she signed some sort of non-disclosure agreement or something like that, where basically says she can't talk about specifics in the case. However, certain policies also, depending on, it's very agency specific, and I would say even more maybe restricted, being that it's state jurisdiction versus like a local jurisdiction. I mean, anywhere up there is state jurisdiction. It's the middle of nowhere.
Right. So now let me ask you a question. She's 83 years old. So let's say on her deathbed, would you write like everything that you know that the police told you and send it to like the paper? Just to keep it on fire in the public? Like, what do you mean the police knew this? Like,
I don't know that I would send it to a paper. I may give it to a trusted, maybe the executor of my estate. I might do that.
And then they can just blast it to the public. Like, this is what the police know. This is the conversations I've had for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to talk about it because it's an active case. But you know what?
Yeah.
I'm gone, and I want people to know. Would that light a fire?
I don't know that it would.
No.
Honestly, I don't know that it would. They would come out with some canned statement rebutting it.
Yeah.
Discounting it or whatever. At this point, I honestly feel that it's control. Why? I don't know. But make it a cold case so you can get extra resources. That's not going to cost the state of New York any money, and get help, because there's people out there who want to see this resolved, and somebody knows something.
Right. And if it's cold,
small town,
they can always reopen it. Like, they don't have to leave it in cold. They could.
Sure.
But it gives them an opportunity to ask outside help too.
Yes. And I'm sure there's legal parts to it too, right? I mean, it's been 40 years. She was 20, so assuming they were 20 to 25, probably white male. It's really all you see up in their area.
Right.
They would be 60, 65 now. I don't know.
I feel like James knows more.
And I think he does. I think he's revealed more than what's been released. I honestly feel that he was the one that saw Kristin walking, because there's only probably one place in town that you can go get pizza at this time.
Right.
And so 139 is like that main strip that goes right through Ovid. He lived on one side where the Golden Buck restaurant was, like right on the other side. Her body was found 400 yards away. And, on the other side is like the Big M, the general store that she walked to. And it's like everything is right there. It was probably that same road that she was walking on that he had to go get pizza.
Right.
And I'm pretty confident that he was the one that stopped down and talked to her through the passenger window and was like, hey, you want to ride back? Not discounting the fact that he also could have been the one who killed her. But if he hasn't been arrested to this point, I don't think that the police are including him still as a suspect. And it's not like the one case that we talked about, the Kathy Devine case. My friend Jeff that came on, and his aunt was murdered, and it took 40 years to solve that one. Gerald, I think was his name, was the suspect. They linked that through DNA.
Right.
They had looked at Gerald in the beginning, because his truck, if you remember in that case, his truck was the one that was seen.
A blue truck.
Across. Yeah, it was like a weird, like very like there's only one truck like that in the town.
Right.
So it was very identifiable. So they had looked at him in the beginning. So the fact that the vehicle that was driving hadn't been released, I think it was Jim that was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you walking?
Right. And it just fits, because if she was upset about finding out that he has a girlfriend and she gets up and just nobody.
And they're not friends. Like, she knows the people. She's like just met the people that he's living with. She's really only just met Jim.
Right.
She doesn't know anybody in the town. So I could see getting out and just going to like walk by yourself.
And if you're pissed off, you would leave your shoes behind. You would be like, I need to
I'm
get
out.
out for a minute. I need to
space.
walk away. I need space.
I'm tired of this pot-filled trailer.
Right. And she might have, it just.
Skank.
It seems like that's a reasonable thing for a person upset to do, needing space. But, like, are we assuming that he went to the pizza place? Like, do we know?
And that's the thing. It's like they haven't released that. Like, was there a receipt? Did he actually bring pizza back? Were there other witnesses that said he came home with a pizza from whatever pizza place that was there? So the fact that they haven't discounted that or thought that it was suspicious makes me feel like they were able to corroborate that. And he actually did do that. So I think the vehicle that was seen creeping by her as she was walking was Jim. Now, these other two, one before Kristin was murdered, who were following her, and then one after Kristin was murdered, walking in the opposite direction, these two males, two young local white males that were seen, seem very suspicious.
Unidentified.
And Swank.
They don't know who it is. These two men.
They know who it is.
Mm.
They probably know, and they've probably interviewed him, and it might be Swank and Zamet. I have no idea, but...
Oh, my God.
The other part to that also is... After the estimated time of Kristin's death and the two young men were seen walking in the opposite direction, there was no other physical description as far as, like, they had blood on their hands. They were, trying to escape from passing vehicles, like being super suspicious. There's no other of that information.
Right.
So that's why I think a lot of this with New York State police is just, like, super controlled.
Yeah.
It's, like, very, like, we can't release this information, but it may help find out more. So there's that balance.
Oh, man.
Anyway, that's my story.
Oh, my God. Well, thank you, Gia, for that story. And
Thanks, Auntie.
yeah, that's heartbreaking. Thank you for covering that. Oh, my God. Rest in peace. And I really hope that Phyllis finds something out. She deserves it. That's not nice. And, God, heartbreaking. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, because we're going to leave you hanging on this, and you're going to have information about, like, everything you said, right? The maps and all that? Okay.
Yeah. So the maps, pictures, other references, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's all going to be on the Patreon.
Okay. Well, please check out After That Crime Chat, only available on our Patreon. Check that stuff out.
And don't forget to follow us on our socials, CrimeChat with Nat and Kat, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. See what we got going on.
Remember, Crime Chat with Nat and Kat, when you become a VIP chatter to our Patreon, you'll have access to bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes blooper, and free merch. And check out some merch in the works.
And maybe we need to come out with something for our 100th episode.
Oh, yes. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Remember, save the date, chatters, July 13th. We're going live. More details to come. Murdaugh and murder.
Oh, you don't want to miss it.
We'll see you next time, chatters. Bye.